The First Amendment protects the free exercise of religion. But how far does that right extend? Is civil disobedience allowed? Can someone be exempt from normal civic duties because of his or her religious beliefs or practices? Barely 25 years after the Constitution was drafted, these questions arose in a New York City court. The case, from 1813, is called People v. Phillips, and it involved the question whether a Catholic priest could be forced to break the seal of confession to testify in a criminal trial. The priest, Father Anthony Coleman, came into possession of stolen goods, which he returned to the rightful owner. In the subsequent criminal prosecution of Daniel and Mary Phillips, the government asked Father Coleman to reveal in court how he had obtained the goods. He refused, on the grounds that he could not reveal information he had received during a confession. That would be a grave sin in his Catholic faith. The state argued that all citizens have a legal duty to cooperate by testifying when called. The criminal justice system depends on such cooperation, the state said. The district attorney claimed that, quote, free exercise of religion, close quote, meant the freedom to worship and receive equal treatment from the state regardless of one's beliefs, not a right to be exempt from civil laws that promote the general welfare. The presiding judge in the case was Mayor DeWitt Clinton, an important politician who opened the Erie Canal and later ran for president. The court unanimously ruled in favor of Father Coleman. It concluded that free exercise meant that the state had no right to interfere with the, quote, ordinances of a religion. Requiring Father Coleman to testify would effectively end the sacrament of confession in the Catholic Church, which depends on absolute confidentiality. It would also present him with an impossible choice: violate his religious convictions and risk eternal damnation, or face criminal punishment. Although People v. Phillips was decided based on the New York State Constitution, the state's guarantee of free exercise of religion was very similar to the First Amendment of the federal Constitution, even though the First Amendment did not apply to the states at the time. According to the court's ruling, quote, no human legislator has a right to meddle with religion, close quote. Free exercise means that a religion should be free to administer its ordinances, that a religion's ceremonies, as well as its essentials, should be protected by law. The court also noted that some exceptions to the duty to testify already existed, such as attorney-client privilege. If the law recognizes secular exemptions, the court implied, it could certainly extend that rationale to religious exemptions. Even so, the Phillips court still acknowledged some limits on religious freedom. Religious belief could not excuse acts that endangered fundamental public morals or safety. But in this case, the secrecy of the confessional did not threaten the public welfare. In fact, considering that Father Coleman had apparently encouraged Mr. and Mrs. Phillips to atone for their wrongdoing and return what they'd stolen, maintaining the secrecy of confession could promote the public good. Phillips anticipates many of the main arguments in free exercise cases today, especially under the so-called compelling state interest test, which continues to apply in many situations. Under that test, if a religious exemption would threaten a compelling state interest, such as public health or safety, the state need not grant the exemption, as long as the state chooses the least restrictive means of achieving its interest. Most state and federal courts continue to recognize the clergy penitent privilege, but there have been attempts recently to eliminate it with respect to clerical sex abuse cases. Judges and scholars continue to debate religious exemptions based on the free exercise clause. Does free exercise only refer to worship, or does it extend to other areas of civic life? How far must the state go in allowing religious believers to escape the requirements of civil law? Phillips is a landmark case that continues to be cited by Supreme Court justices. The case shows that these issues have been relevant since the founding era, and it provides insight and precedent for constitutional interpretation even today.